And I went back and even took you back to what you learned in the introduction to psychology, how to study. So remember to keep on training your pupils on how to revise and encourage them. Encouragement is a good form of reinforcement. This will prevent learners from forgetting what they have learned. Most of the behaviors we observe in learners come about as a result of learning and reinforcement. And if for some reason the behavior is undesirable, it can be unlearned by eliminating or controlling the reinforcing factors. I think we understand that. So if we find that we have some learners who have some kind of behaviors that are not good for the other learners or for the learner himself and for the school at large, we should remember we said the learning theories open opportunities for us to research and study. And therefore we are saying if we observe an undesirable behavior among our learners or in our learners, we try to understand the circumstances under which these behaviors are being acquired, and we can withdraw or control the factors that are contributing to that behavior by trying to minimize them or control their presence so that the learner does not move towards that direction. So that brings us to the end of classical conditioning. That brings us to the end of classical conditioning. And I want to move to the second form of conditioning theories. Remember we said conditioning theories will depend on where the emphasis of whoever formulated the theory placed their emphasis on. So we have looked at Pavlov, and Pavlov placed his emphasis on stimulus response. A particular stimulus is provided. What is the response? And what is the implication of that to us teachers? So the second conditioning theory is what we call operant conditioning. Is what we call operant conditioning. I don't know why most of you are signing out. Please don't leave, the class is still on. The class is still on. So the second theory in terms of conditioning theories is what we call operant conditioning. What we have discussed earlier on was classical conditioning. So what is this second theory, and where is the emphasis in this theory of operant conditioning? So once we go through operant conditioning, we should be able to differentiate classical conditioning, which involves stimulus response, and we differentiate it with operant conditioning. In other words, what are the differences in the emphasis where the psychologists who came up with such conditioning theories, where did they lay their emphasis on? So operant conditioning is a mode of learning in which the frequency of a behavior is increased or decreased depending upon its consequences. Let us place ourselves here that because we now understand classical conditioning, we will now be looking at operant conditioning with a view to being able to find the similarities and the differences between the two conditioning theories. So that is operant conditioning. So we are saying, unlike classical conditioning, in which the original behaviors are the natural biological responses to the presence of some stimulus, such as food, water, or pain, in operant conditioning, or operant conditioning applies to voluntary responses. Remember, we saw the characteristics of classical conditioning. One of them was reinforcement. Something has to be there to cause the behavior to take place. But here we are saying operant conditioning applies to voluntary responses. So that one is a clear difference between classical conditioning and operant conditioning. There's reinforcement in classical conditioning. In voluntary in operant conditioning, it is voluntary response. We are saying voluntary responses which the organism performs deliberately in order to produce a desirable outcome. The term operant emphasizes these points, that the organism operates on its environments, producing certain outcomes or results that determine whether the behavior will occur or not. Sometimes operant conditioning is also referred to as instrumental conditioning. These points, the first point in this slide is a continuation of the previous sentence. Let me start it again. The term operant emphasizes this point of deliberately producing a desirable outcome. The organism operates on its environment, producing certain outcome or results that determine whether the behavior will occur or not. So we are saying operant conditioning is also referred to as instrumental conditioning because the behavior of the organism is very instrumental, or the behavior of the organism facilitates in achieving a certain outcome, achieving a certain goal. The organism is quite instrumental or responsible for generating reward for its activity or behavior. So just as we have seen, classical conditioning is a theory that was brought about by theory of learning that was brought about by Pavlov. Operant or instrumental conditioning theory was brought about by B.F. Skinner. You'll get the more detailed notes about B.F. Skinner's experiments. But in summary, what did Skinner do in his experiments? Skinner conducted many experiments using animals such as rats and pigeons. And in one experiment, a rat was placed in what is known as Skinner box or an operant chamber. So within that box, within the box was a food mechanism with a press bar and some food pellets. So the rat was deprived of food. So we are saying the food deprived rat. So the rat was placed in that box and it was deprived of food. So the food deprived rat is free to move within the confined area in search of food. The rat would move around the box. And of course, we can see the first sentence says, within the box was a food delivery mechanism with a press bar and some food pellets. So the rat is within the box and it is hungry. So what do we see here? The rat is moving around the box in search of food. So as the rat moves within the box, accidentally or out of curiosity presses the bar, and once it presses that bar, as a result, some food pellets drop out. So after gaining this outcome, the rat would continue with its apparently random activity and eventually it would press the bar again and obtain some food pellets. So as time passed, the rat kept on pressed the lever or the bar more and more frequently, and finally it learned to consistently operate the lever to obtain food. So remember we said operant conditioning, the behavior of the organism is quite instrumental and it is a deliberate undertaking. So we are saying it finally learned to consistently operate, that is, press the bar, and on pressing the bar every time it is hungry, it learned that once you press the bar, the food will come. So according to B.F. Skinner, what stimulated the bar pressing behavior of the rats was not very important. What is significant here is that the rat pressed, the fact of the rat pressing the bar was a response. And as a result, the rat received food. So the food was the reinforcement. Whether or not the rat will repeat the behavior is determined by the consequences of the behavior. If the consequences are negative, the chances are that the behavior will be avoided. We are saying negative in that if every time the rat pressed that bar there was no food coming, it would press no food, because it is moving around the box in search of food. But when it pressed the bar, some food pellets dropped. But if it pressed that bar and no food came, if it pressed the bar and no food came, it would have no business with stepping on the bar. So on the other hand, if the consequences are pleasant, in other words, like every time you press the bar there is food, the behavior will be repeated and sustained for as long as it is reinforced. So there are many real-life examples of operant conditioning. Some of these are summarized in the figure below. So before I move away from that slide, we see what is happening in this B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning learning theory. It is a deliberate move in the first place. And if the move is made and there is no positive outcome, after several trials, the move will be avoided. But we are saying that the rat makes a deliberate move of pressing the bar, and immediately it presses that bar, food pellets are dropping out, and therefore it comes to learn that whenever I press this bar, I'll get food. Whenever I press this bar, I'll get food. So that is the main issue here. It's a deliberate movement which produces consistent behavior. So according to B.F. Skinner, what stimulated the bar pressing behavior of the rat was not very important. What is significant is that the rat pressed or responded to the bar, and as a result, it received food, which is a reinforcement. I think I had gone through this slide, but let me link it with the coming slide. So we are saying if the consequences are negative, the chances are that the behavior will be avoided. And on the other hand, if the consequences are pleasant, the behavior will be repeated and sustained for as long as it is reinforced. Here, reinforcement is the presence of the food. So there are many real-life examples of operant conditioning. So let us see what we have. Again, this is a diagram which may not be quite clear here. Just a moment, please. So this diagram, it will be clear in your notes when I upload them. And I want to say I'm sorry I did not upload the ones for last week because the system had problems, the LMS system. But I'll still try within the course of this week. They told me they are working on it. So be patient, the notes will come. Yes, Martin Mulu, I will upload them, but I cannot upload them if the system is not allowing me to. So once the system, the time I tried, the system was not working, but I will do immediately the system is working. So this is the diagram. So if you move with me, here we have the stimulus, the operant or the reinforcement, and then we have the consequence. In other words, what do we expect? And then the implications. I believe we are together. So what you cannot read well, let me read it for you. These are, we said they are real life examples of operant conditioning. So here we are saying teacher promises a trip for good behavior. What is the reinforcement here? Or what is the operant, or the reinforcement or the punishment? So this is a reinforcement stroke punishment. So teacher promises trip for good behavior. And then here we are seeing a student misbehave. Remember we are saying if the bar did not produce food pellets, then the rat would avoid stepping on the bar because it is not giving, is not producing a consequence which is favorable. So here we are saying the trip is cancelled or withdrawn. So the implications here are that students are less likely to misbehave before the trip is undertaken. So here we have the stimulus is that the teacher promises trip for good behavior, but if a student misbehaves, the trip is cancelled or withdrawn, and therefore the implication here is that students will not misbehave before they undertake the trip. Another stimulus we have here is teacher announces a test. So what is the operant condition here? Students will study diligently, and what is the consequence? If the teacher announces a test, student studies diligently and scores a good grade. Here we are saying student scores an A. So what will be the implication here? We are saying that the student is likely to study harder in future because they have been promised a test here, and then the condition is that the student sets themselves. Remember, operant conditioning, we have said it is deliberate. The subject or the organism is responsible for its behavior. And therefore, because the teacher has said there will be a test, we are seeing a case of a student here who studied very hard and diligently, and as a result of the effort they put, the effort the rat put to step on the bar, as a result of the effort the student put, he scores a very good grade, which is A. So that tells you that the implication is that the student has learned that anytime they are waiting for a test, they will be studying hard because they have found that studying hard produces good grades. Another real life example of operant conditioning is the last one here. Invitation for a job interview. This one is a funny one. We are saying that so whoever is invited for a job interview carries a charm in the interview, passes the interview as a consequence, and gets a job. So what does he do? He carries the charm. The charm carrying behavior increases because it seems like with the charm, it has good results. But I'm not encouraging that. So here we have another one, which is a teacher here. The stimulus is the teacher. The operant here is students talk in class. What does the teacher do as a consequence? The teacher shortens students' break. What is the implication? Students are less likely to talk in class because as a consequence, their break has been shortened, and therefore in the future they will not make noise in class so that they can have their break as normal as it is planned. So the issues with the operant conditioning is that it is quite deliberate. Allow me to look at the examples of operant conditioning, and then we shall break in the next 5 minutes, please. I can see most of us have signed out. So we have reinforcements. This is an action or event that increases the probability that a response will be repeated. So remember, we also saw that as a factor of classical conditioning, reinforcement. So here in operant conditioning, reinforcement increases the probability that a response will be repeated. And the reinforcement in this example of the B.F. Skinner's box is that the rats was the appearance of the food pellets caused the rat to keep on stepping on the bar. So in operant conditioning, it is clear that a person's behavior can be controlled through reinforcement. That is true. So in order to sustain particular desirable behavior, the frequency of reinforcement must be increased, whereas to suppress undesirable behavior, reinforcement must be decreased or initially or finally eliminated. If there's something you cannot get, yes, Mary Gatti, when the system is ready, I will upload. I don't know what you mean by the whole PDF, but I will upload last week's notes and this week's notes. I will be uploading the notes after we have gone through them. I will not give you the whole module because I prefer going through the section before you get your notes, so that when you get your notes, you'll read them with understanding. Dear friends, these are some of the examples of operant conditioning. And I would want to end there with these examples of operant conditioning, because the next area, types of reinforcement, we need to study it when we are not tired. I know we woke up very early to attend the class, and I applaud you for that. And thank you that you made it this early and we are able to do this much. So when we shall continue from there next time. Let us end there with examples of operant conditioning. But when the system is ready, you'll get all the materials for the areas that we have covered. So if there is no question, kindly allow me to end the meeting. It is now 9:40, and thank you for your patience and being able to log in large numbers as you have done. Thank you, Charles Bahati. Thank you, Albert. Thank you all of you for appreciating my presentation. Thank you, thank you. Allow me to end the session so that you can attend your next class. Thank you, everybody.